Thank you, Madam President. I rise to explain my vote. This legislation will address the discrepancies and disparities for missing and murdered Black, Indigenous, women and girls of color by instituting a task force on missing BIPOC women and girls in New York State. I just want to share a couple of statistics that demonstrate why this task force is necessary and why I hope my colleagues will support. According to a 2020 report by the Women's Media Center, there are approximately 75,000 missing Black women and girls across the United States. Another report released by the Sovereign Bodies Institute documents that there are over 2,306 missing Indigenous women and girls in the U.S. Nationally, more than 250,000 women and girls were reported missing in 2020, and at least 40% were women and girls of color, despite making up less than 15% of the population. And this came from the National Crime Information Center, NCIC, missing person and unidentified persons statistics. In addition, in a 2-year review of all suspected national human trafficking incidents, 40% of sex trafficking women were identified as Black women. From 2016 to 2020, there was a 38% increase in the number of missing children. 31% of that increase was for Black children. And in 2020, the New York State Missing Persons Clearinghouse annual report shared that 59.8% of children reported missing were female, and 29.2% of them were Black. And so when you think about these stats, right, and included among the tens of thousands of these missing BIPOC women and girls are abductees, sex trafficking victims, and runaways that get grouped disproportionately, and that this thus impacts the intersection of both racism and sexism, and it is subjective to pervasive social and economic barriers. For these reasons, missing BIPOC girls are often categorized as runaways, which makes it more likely that their cases will be pushed aside and treated with a lack of urgency. This is an epidemic that unfortunately is being rendered silent, and we as a state owe it to these women and their families to do better. This task force will develop policy changes within New York State government agencies to address the lack of care and concern for missing and murdered BIPOC women and girls, including that our first responders are also culturally competent. This task force will ensure that there is transparency when it comes to the numbers of missing and murdered BIPOC women and girls, so that communities understand the scale of this problem. This task force will also make sure that communities are educated and trained on the prevention, protection, and protocols relating to missing BIPOC women and girls as it relates to social media, and will recommend preventative programming and ideas to protect vulnerable women and girls. Madam President, this legislation will take a crucial step to make visible missing BIPOC women and girls in the public discussion. By developing this task force on this crisis, New York has an opportunity to not only take charge, but also acknowledge the work that has to be done to bring justice for missing BIPOC women and girls. I would like to thank our Majority Leader for her support on this initiative, and I will be voting aye, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.